And this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, the American dream in limbo. Nearly 1 million people who arrived in the U.S. as children face deportation after the Trump administration pulled the curtain down on DACA. Our deep dive on the controversial decision and what it means for the tech community. Plus, HPE beats on EPS and revenue, but remains cautious on forecasts. We'll break down the first earnings scorecard since CEO Meg Whitman nearly jumped ship and monitor the company's conference call this hour. And Rovio rolls the dice on an IPO for its most successful franchise. Will Angry Birds continue to soar or follow the flight path of other game makers that bet and failed on the public markets? First, to our lead. After months of speculation and mixed messages, the Trump administration made it official. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, better known as DACA, is ending. President Trump spoke about it this afternoon. Take a listen.
I have a great heart for the folks we're talking about, a great love for them. And people think in terms of children, but they're really young adults. I have a love for these people, and hopefully now Congress will be able to help them and do it properly. And I can tell you, in speaking to members of Congress, they want to be able to do something and do it right.
The program allows people who entered the United States illegally as children to apply for renewable 2-year permits that shields them from deportation. Those who fall into this category are known as Dreamers. Tech reaction to the repeal was swift, with leaders quick to offer their take. Apple CEO Tim Cook tweeted, "Dreamers contribute to our companies and our communities just as much as you and I. Apple will fight for them to be treated as equals." Google CEO Sundar Pichai also tweeted, "Dreamers are our neighbors, our friends, our co-workers. This is their home. Congress needs to act now to defend DACA with Dreamers." Other tech giants like Microsoft have said they intend to take legal action if their employees who happen to be Dreamers are deported, and will fund their employees' legal bills if necessary. Joining us now to discuss, out of Washington, Alex Narastra, Cato Institute's immigration policy analyst, as well as our very own Bloomberg News reporter, Bill Ferries. Bill, I want to start with you. First of all, what does this mean for, let's talk about businesses. Microsoft has 39 Dreamers. Apple has 250 of them. What does this mean for companies that employ these people?
It really puts the employees in particular in a state of legal limbo. What President Trump and Attorney General Sessions said today is that they want to kick this over to Congress, give them about 6 months to pass legislation that could, in theory, make these people have full legal status, just like they've had under the DREAM Act or in some other capacity. The reality is immigration reform has been a real hard sell in Congress for several years, and Congress has a ton on its plate already when you think about the debt limit and Hurricane Harvey and passing a budget and all those things. Is probably not something they were looking for, and it adds to a very full plate over the next 6 months.
Now, Alex, President Obama did make a statement today. He said to target these people is wrong because they have done nothing wrong. It is self-defeating. It is cruel. Let's be clear. The action taken today isn't required legally. It is a political decision and a moral question. Talk to us about that. Is this a moral question and not a legal issue?
Well, there's certainly, I think it can be both. I mean, there are moral issues here as well as legal ones. But in terms of the moral dimension, you have people who were brought here as children under the age of 16 or 16 or younger. They did not make the decision themselves to come to the United States and break our immigration laws. Many of them in these cases have grown up here. Many of them didn't know they were illegal immigrants until they were older. This is the only country that they know. They are educationally and culturally American. That's why about 80% of Americans have sympathy for them and want to give them at least the ability to stay or a path to citizenship. So these are people that we can have a lot of sympathy for. And generally, we don't like to punish people for the crimes of their parents. And this is one of these cases where the American public, I think, is completely on the right side of this ethically, notwithstanding any of the legal issues.
Now, President Trump, Bill, is saying that now it's time for Congress to pass, comprehensive immigration reform. But will he actually support it?
Well, the language used today was very interesting. President Trump has kind of publicly agonized over this decision, even though during the campaign he said it was something he would do on his first day in office. But the language you heard, particularly from Attorney General Jeff Sessions, was much harsher. He really described people who have benefited under the DREAM Act as illegal aliens. He said they have been taking jobs away from true citizens. That kind of terminology doesn't sound to most people's ears very compassionate, and it does raise the question of how much support he'll put behind any congressional effort to enact this legislatively.
And one of the important points, by the way, if I may just real quick, Attorney General Sessions said that any kind of legalization of the DREAM Act should probably be teamed up with other legislative proposals that the president wants, such as the RAISE Act, which was a bill introduced that would cut legal immigration in half, including cut skilled immigration by about 100,000 a year once it goes into effect. And that's just a non-starter. That's dead on arrival. So if Congress is serious about passing the DREAM Act to legalize these people, they need to really ignore the advice, the political advice of the Attorney General, and instead put up a clean DREAM Act without any other kind of features or anything unpopular like the RAISE Act, which will make it impossible to pass.
And of course, Mitch McConnell already weighing in on this. Let's take in a listen to what he had to say earlier. All right, Senator Mitch McConnell, well, he said President Obama wrongly believed he had the authority to rewrite our immigration law. Today's action by President Trump corrects that fundamental mistake. This Congress will continue working on securing our border and ensuring a lawful system of immigration that works. So, Bill, what's next?
Congress is just getting back into town tonight. This was not the welcome present they were really looking for. On the immediate horizon, it's hard to see something getting done in the next few weeks. Congress has to pass an increase in the debt limit. They have to look at passing some sort of a budget or continuing resolution just to fund the government, either through the end of the year or through the next fiscal year. And you have Hurricane Harvey aid, and that's going to be tied into all of that. So I imagine you're going to have different proposals coming up from bipartisan groups of senators and members of the House. But I don't think we're going to get a real clear guidance on whether this is possible for quite a while.
All right. Nancy Pelosi has just been speaking with reporters, and she mentioned that she doesn't think attaching DACA to the debt ceiling is a reality. Alex, tell me a little bit more about what you expect when it comes to the actual legal fight that these people and companies that employ them might now end up involved in.
So it's going to be a very vicious legal fight. We already heard about a lot of the tech firms that are going to be defending their employees who are on DACA. But this also speaks to a wider problem. A lot of these firms have large numbers of foreign-born workers on their workforces, either on employment-based green cards or other visas. And I think they feel like they need to defend the Dreamers, especially to show the rest of their employees and investors that they're serious about protecting their very skilled workforce. Now, we have a 6-month deadline when in early March 2018, the president's cancellation of DACA will start pushing 1,000 Dreamers a month off of their work permits and into the illegal economy, where they'll either be fired from their jobs immediately or they will have to work illegally in the black market, just like the other about 10 to 11 million illegal immigrants who are in this country. We are on a deadline here to be able to solve this. This is not a soft deadline. And Congress, this is one of the more pressing issues. This is more important than a lot of the other ones they've been talking about. This is something where there's broad agreement across the political spectrum with moderates, with conservatives, and with a lot of liberals that something needs to be done to legalize these people and to bring them out of the shadows so that they can work lawfully in the United States. It's good for the economy, it's good for us ethically, and it's consistent with our traditions in this country. So we need to get on this, and I think Congress needs to get on it and try to solve this problem immediately, because it's very rare that Congress actually passes a reform in an election year of this magnitude. So they really have 3 to 4 months to be able to figure it out before it becomes politically more desperate and toxic.
A lot of work to do for sure. Alex Nowrasteh of Cato Institute's immigration policy analyst, thanks so much. Our Bloomberg News reporter, Bill Ferries, thank you as well. Well, Apple has returned to the bond market. The iPhone maker is offering $5 billion of debt in 4 parts after dropping a 2-year floating rate component. This according to a person with knowledge of the matter. Apple is about 3/4 of the way through a program that's returning $300 billion of capital to shareholders by the end of March 2019. Coming up, HPE is emerging from an aggressive effort to slim down with promising prospects and stronger than projected sales. We'll break down the company's third quarter earnings next. This is Bloomberg. Google is looking to resurrect its Android One smartphone program in India. The Alphabet company is teaming up with Xiaomi to market the Chinese smartphone maker's Mi A1 phone in one of the world's largest emerging markets. Google first launched the Android One project in India 3 years ago to sell affordable smartphones there, but sales were lacking. The phone went on sale Tuesday for $234 and has a 5.5-inch 1080p screen and a dual camera system. Well, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is emerging from an aggressive slim down with promising prospects. The company released third quarter earnings showing stronger than projected sales. Shares and after-hours trading popped as much as 6% on the news. Joining us now from Framingham, Massachusetts, IDC Chief Research Officer Crawford Del Prete. And I know you just got off the phone, Crawford, with Meg Whitman. What did she have to say?
Well, I think that, as she's characterizing on the call, which I'm sort of off and on listening to here, it's they feel like they have more work to do, but they've made really good progress. I think what Meg spends a lot of time talking about is that people need to understand how different this company is right now, in that when they split away from the services group, you're talking about a company that 110,000 people exited over the last 12 months, or at that time, which was in March of last year. So the Hewlett-Packard that you see today is a way more focused Hewlett-Packard, a much leaner HP, and now is starting to make moves for what their future is going to look like. And as I believe, this company is not just in the commodity enterprise gear market, but they're starting to gear up to take the company in a new direction.
As you were saying, Crawford, Meg Whitman speaking on the call right now, saying that there is a new effort to make operations even more efficient, but that they also have more work to do. Interesting to hear her say that, given all of the reporting about her in contention for the CEO job at Uber. As Bloomberg has reported, she was the top candidate until about the 11th hour, even though a few weeks ago she said that she was not interested. Is she going to stay at HP? What do you make of these reports that she was that close to leaving?
Look, in my opinion, Meg is an incredibly talented executive who has provided unbelievable contributions to the Valley. And having said that, the Hewlett-Packard that exists today in the form of DXC technology, in the form of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and in the form of HP Inc. is really vastly transformed. I think that she can look back at this point and say she put the company on a different path, took the company in a new direction, and I wouldn't be surprised if, isn't over the next 6 months looking for a new chapter. But I don't get that feeling when I speak to her. That's my conjecture when you think about the transformation this company's been through. But I think that when you think about someone as talented as Meg, it doesn't surprise me that she's getting a lot of calls and getting a lot of interest for significant transformation projects that other companies are facing. And, I would have put Uber squarely in that category.
Now, I was at Dell, the VMworld last week, and spoke with Michael Dell. We're going to hear more from him later this week. I asked him about HPE, and he indicated that he didn't think they were doing so hot. How do you think HPE is performing relative to the juggernaut that is now Dell Technologies?
Yeah, so they're very different strategies. Dell is able to play a portfolio strategy and is executing that very, very well. It's super important to keep in mind that they are executing that strategy out of the light of what Michael likes to call the 90-day shot clock, which we're talking about here today. If you look at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise has slimmed the company down to go after outsized profit pools within the enterprise. And then now today, with their acquisition of Cloud Technology Partners, is now looking at what are the services they can add to their technology services portfolio to be able to grow that meaningful base of revenue for the company. Now, again, the strategies are increasingly over time just incredibly different. I think Michael's got a great strategy, and he's going to continue to execute that. But he's going to face challenges, in certain areas, like being able to keep all that large, diverse business executing on all cylinders. HP has gone the other area, which is really get focused and then build off that core. I would say that they're entirely different strategies. Up until recently, Dell had been executing better with the leverage that they had in terms of doing it outside of the scrutiny of public markets. What we're seeing today is HP's making some progress, and it's not surprising given their ability to be a lot more nimble than they were, say, a year ago.
All right, Crawford Del Pret, IDC Chief Research Officer, thanks so much for joining us there. We are still listening to the HPE call. Meg Wickman just saying just now that right-sizing part of Next is their next efficiency effort. All right, coming up, devastation from Hurricane Harvey has hit Greater Houston, and insurance companies are looking to the sky for help. How the drone industry is helping Houston's victims next. This is Bloomberg. Hurricane Harvey has devastated much of the greater Houston area, and insurance companies are now looking to get as much information as they can in relief efforts. For example, Farmers Insurance will use Kesbury drones to fly over damaged areas in Texas. This will leverage their highly accurate imaging technology to capture video images and use analytics to analyze the footage and provide reports from the farmers' claims adjusters. For more on this partnership and how the drone industry is helping Houston's Harvey victims, we're joined now by Kesbury CEO George Matthew. So, George, first of all, tell us exactly how this is all going to work.
Hi, Emily. Thanks so much for having me on air again. It's great to see you. We at Kesbury are really focused on farmers and other P&C insurance carriers and adjusters largely having the ability to help on all the rescue and recovery efforts that are going down in Houston and the Corpus Christi area. In particular, Kesbury is focused on effectively the recovery effort for really enabling claims processing to occur faster using a Kesbury drone. The CEO of Farmers actually got on air just a few days ago and reiterated that the use of a drone for the purpose of recovery and being able to process the claim faster can really enable the adjusters to be able to work at a pace which is unprecedented. He even quoted as saying that a drone can help the recovery process occur where claims adjusters can cover literally 3 houses per hour versus without a drone, it's about 3 houses per day.
Right. Without a drone, they're using ladders, they're using ropes, they're using harnesses. I know that a lot of the regulatory issues, some of these waivers are being passed out right now. I mean, what is the status on when the drones are going to be out there at work?
Yeah, so great question. So drones are actually flying as we speak. Okay. Most of those drones were flying regarding the rescue effort for the last few days. Our Kesbury drones are actually now in air related to recovery. So we have our customers using drones as we speak, our drones in particular, to aid in the recovery effort as of this past day. And so we see the coming days, weeks, and months largely being about supporting all of our customers and specifically the policyholders, because there's been a deep devastation and impact regarding everything that's gone on with Harvey to date, and we're just there to support our customers and policyholders.
So what are you seeing out there? What are the big challenges?
There's a lot of work to do, to be frank, Emily, because if we look at the amount of damage that's been impacted in Corpus Christi, in Houston, in Galveston, there is multiple months of recovery that's underway. What we see is the need to be able to process those claims as fast as possible and to enable that policyholders have the best possible experience. So for farmers and the other P&C carriers that we're supporting down in Houston and of course around the country, it's about that customer experience being seamless to get claims processed in a meaningful way, and the drone is really enabling that to happen as fast as possible.
So we know that Irma might be hitting Florida in the near term. Will you be involved in that? Will you be involved in other natural disasters?
Yeah, so any place that there is wind damage, where there's hurricane-related damage, where there's flooding, we're starting to see the use of drones most effectively support the insurance adjusters. And so it's not just about the P&C carriers, the property and casualty insurance carriers, but also the roofers and the independent adjusters. So for Kesbury and others in the drone space, I see us all being busy for the foreseeable future.
All right, George Matthew, you know, when it comes to talking about the future of this industry, do you see this as the future of how insurance claims can work?
Yeah, well, I think more broadly speaking, this is the future of industrial work. The use of an aerial intelligence platform like Caspery's is really supporting the way that work like this can be done faster by roofers, by construction workers, by miners. In that regard, Caspery has been really scaling out our operations and our capability to serve our customers' needs and, frankly, the policyholders in their greatest time of need. So we're very focused at this moment to ensure that we are providing the best possible experience to our customers and therefore their policyholders. And this is where the next few months are really going to take Caspery forward in the market.
All right. It's good to see how technology is helping, even if just a little. George Matthew, Caspery CEO, thanks so much for joining us. Coming up, Facebook's latest play to become a hub for online video takes aim at YouTube. We'll have the latest on a new deal with the music industry. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. Facebook is said to be offering hundreds of millions of dollars to major record labels and publishers for music rights. In exchange, users would be allowed to include songs in videos that they upload. According to people familiar with the matter, Facebook has currently agreed to set up a system for tagging videos that infringe copyrights, but that system could take up to 2 years to establish. Joining us now, James Chakmak, analyst at Monness Crespi Hart, and our Bloomberg News reporter, Lucas Shaw, who broke this story with our own Sarah Fryer. Lucas, I will start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about exactly how this would work?
So Facebook and the music industry have spent months trying to figure out how to resolve this ongoing problem where you have millions of videos getting uploaded to Facebook that have music that can't be there. So Facebook is trying to build a system kind of like what YouTube uses, which YouTube calls Content ID. But because that'll take so long, in the meantime, Facebook would give a bunch of different rights holders millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, to basically buy them off while they build this system, supposedly in collaboration with these music partners, to have a system for all the user-generated videos that you see and are so familiar with already.
So, James, this comes as Facebook is rolling out a new hub for video called Watch. What do you make of this?
I think it's great. I think it's super smart. And the thing is, they had the leverage right now, so they can likely get the deal done. And if you think about it, what they're doing is putting their money where their mouth is and actually willing to spend a ton of money in order to keep people engaged. You know, whether it's ensuring that there's no issues when it comes to music, because that's one of the primary use cases of uploading videos for user-generated content, and that, you know, millennials like to do. But at the same time, they're willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on top of that for video content. Like they bid $600 million for the Indian Premier League on cricket. So I think what they're showing is that their willingness to really be a contender and a real player when it comes to the digital content arena.
Lucas, who does this put pressure on? YouTube? Who else?
The record industry certainly hopes YouTube. I mean, they've been trying to get YouTube to change the way it behaves for years, really with no success, because to James's point, they have no leverage. So they're hoping there, and also it does put some pressure on Facebook to figure it out. I mean, I think they're hoping that, you know, the tighter they get bound together, the more seriously Facebook will take these problems. But it doesn't necessarily put pressure on anyone in the long term. You know, this is really just the next step in Facebook figuring out what its video strategy is.
So on that note, James, Facebook also made a bid for India's Premier League cricket games. They lost. However, they also bid for NFL Thursday night football games. They lost to Amazon. What do you make of they're very much dabbling here, it seems.
They're dabbling, but making, $100+ million bids, for this kind of content. And at the end of the day, I think if on a head-to-head matchup, Amazon versus Facebook, it's advantage Amazon. Because investors are conditioned to a 0% margin, so there's virtually unlimited amount of cash they can spend. But Facebook, I think, willing to show the willingness, I think, is impressive in and of itself. I think the one thing that Facebook needs to be careful of is not trying to monetize some of their newer emerging efforts, like the WhatsApp and Messengers of the world, too fast, and make sure they get the experiences right.
Okay, let's talk about that, because we're just starting to see how they will potentially be earning money from WhatsApp. They're developing some new features. They're going to charge businesses to use those features to communicate with consumers. What do you make of that?
I think it's the right thing to do.
By the way, they spent $20 billion on WhatsApp, we should point out.
Yeah, well, it's the right thing to do. I just don't want them to rush it, because they executed so perfectly with Facebook, so perfectly with Instagram. And right now, people are still using Messenger and WhatsApp, but I'm not sure they're ready for the kind of in-app type of advertisements. And yes, it's great to monetize the business relationships. It's been
a few years, though.
It's been a few years, but they're also facing pressure right now with the declining ad load, so they're going to need to show growth. And I just hope that it's not being done as a reactive measure to the market expectations versus actually turning on the spigots for monetization at the right time.
When it comes to Twitter and Snapchat at this point, I mean, we know growth is struggling at both those companies. Do they stand a chance?
I think Twitter does have a chance as long as they deploy the right strategy, because Twitter is a service that I think is indispensable when it comes to real-time information. We use it, every site, every website, and media outlet, references it. With Snap, I think that every day is going to get harder and harder. And we came out initially bullish on Snap, but I think they're their worst enemy, because they're not capitalizing on their core strengths. And in the meantime, you have Facebook showing the willingness to spend money on content. And if they start to win that battle, it's a losing proposition for Snap.
Lucas, when it comes to content, obviously when you're bidding for rights to a specific franchise, it is a zero-sum game. But more broadly, is it a zero-sum game? Can Facebook and Amazon and YouTube, can they all win there if they're willing to pay up?
The tech companies could all win. The question is the ecosystem big enough, not just for them, but for the media guys that already have the rights? I mean, what we've seen in the NFL, Twitter had the NFL last year, but most people still watch those games on CBS and NBC. The audiences on on Twitter were much smaller. What we'll see with Amazon this year is, can Amazon pull some of those viewers away? And how seriously are Facebook, Amazon, Twitter going to bid on some of these rights? I was really surprised by the Facebook bid for the cricket rights, just because Facebook executives have in the past indicated that they didn't want to spend a ton of money on rights. They were hoping to just work out scenarios where they could share advertising revenue. That suggests that they're willing to spend enough money to try to buy away some of the biggest rights out there. And when that happens, we could see a more significant migration of viewers from TV to these newer platforms.
All right, we'll be watching, and I know you'll keep us updated. Lucas Shaw of Bloomberg News down in LA, and James Chakmak with me here in the studio, analyst at Monness, Crespi & Hart. Thank you both. All right, we've been listening into the HPE earnings call, continuing to monitor it. CEO Meg Whitman has just been asked about that Uber CEO job. She said, there is lots more work to do. I am not going anywhere. All right, coming up, there is a new player in the London taxi-hailing market. How Estonian startup Taxify is taking on Uber in the British capital next. This is Bloomberg. Some big banks are already using artificial intelligence to monitor traders, and now they're looking to expand that coverage to ensure they don't wind up in a similar situation to Wells Fargo. Banks have asked IBM if they can use its Watson Financial Services team to watch salespeople, loan officers, and more. In June, IBM rolled out a trader surveillance product to help uncover malfeasance like trading and collusion. Banks are hoping this prevents scandals like the one at Wells Fargo, where employees opened up as many as 3.5 million fake checking and credit card accounts. Well, Uber is getting some tough competition in London today. Estonian startup Taxify officially entered the taxi hailing market there. Taxify has signed up 3,000 private hire taxi drivers compared to Uber's 40,000 and says those drivers have been vetted to meet local licensing standards. Our very own Caroline Hyde spoke with Taxify's CEO Marcus Willig in London ahead of the launch to get his thoughts on how a company just the fraction of the size of Uber can compete.
Yeah, I think London so far has really been suffering from a lack of competition. So essentially there's one app which rules the market, and we're here to show that actually we can improve on that. And Londoners should really benefit from a new service.
It seems to me as though almost it's not so much just being aimed at the customers, but this is being very much aimed at the drivers. It is meant to be bettering their way of life. How in which do you distinguish yourself from Uber in that capacity?
Yeah, so we want to serve both sides as well as we can. So on the passenger side, we'll be offering them long-term discounts of 10 to 15% over anything else, while the driver side is making 10 to 15% more on every single trip. So bring an example, as a driver who makes right now minimum wage, driving full time, they can now expect to earn about £200 extra every month, which we see is already quite a big deal.
And the way of doing that is, of course, having thinner commissions, but that's thinner margins for yourself.
Exactly, but we see that in the long term, actually, this makes more sense. If we take lower commissions, therefore, we can actually have happier drivers, which leads to better service, and in the long term will hopefully lead to a bigger network as well.
The network is expanding not just to London, but where else in Europe are you eyeing up?
So today we're in 19 countries already. That means mainly Central Europe, Eastern Europe, but also Africa and Mexico, for example.
And the eye is on other parts of Europe. I understand Paris is in the offing?
Yeah, so we're launching in Paris in a few months already.
And the expansion has, of course, been accelerated to a certain extent by your partnership with Didi Chuxing. Talk to us about how that relationship came about with the Chinese giant, why they wanted to partner up with a European company.
Didi is one of the biggest ride-sharing apps in the world, and they have a very clear strategy that they want to support the local champions. So they have already invested in the US, in India, Southeast Asia, and now finally they managed to find a good partner in Europe, because we managed to prove that we can actually win in a lot of markets and make a service that's better than what was there before.
And so what are they providing to you?
So on top of the money, which we can just use to fuel the expansion, we're getting a lot of new expertise, how to set up the business operations efficiently and get all the newest technology advice.
Because what has been your focus when expanding Taxify? The aim really is to be the second entrant, isn't it? You let Uber perhaps do the hard work in terms of regulation, and then you come on in.
Yeah, so in many ways, that's one of the main reasons why we have been so efficient. So we go into markets where ride-sharing is already a proven concept. So there's millions of people who use it, there's tens of thousands of drivers, and then we come in and we improve on that by having just cheaper commissions and therefore giving more back to riders and drivers. So we don't want to get into these regulatory troubles and be wasting millions in lobby battles in most cases.
How do you navigate Europe, therefore? I mean, has it been difficult? I'm thinking of Berlin, I'm thinking of Barcelona, I'm thinking of Madrid. These cities are difficult because the regulatory environment isn't hospitable for ride sharing.
Exactly, so that's why these cities are second on our list. There's already so many cities in the world which embrace ride sharing. So we first want to go there, solve the problems, bring a better product to market, and then worry about the second cities.
And the relationship with Didi, how does that go forward? Do you end up seeing them investing more money? Do you end up being bought by them? What sort of a relationship do you foster for the future?
So right now, I think the industry is still in its early days. So we're facing really, really fast growth every single month. So right now, the focus is to grow. And I think all of these questions will be solved some years down the line.
What is your viewpoint in terms of the ride-sharing ecosystem? Do you think it's all the fact that we'll be going to autonomous driving in the future? What did you, when you first came up with the concept, which I understand was, 4 years ago when you were just 19 years old and you were coding it yourself, where did you see this product going?
Well, of course, 4 years ago when I started, I didn't really have an idea how big this industry will be. So that has been quite exciting. But now that we're already this big as we are, then we see that actually autonomous cars will definitely be the future of ride sharing. But they're still 5 or 10 years ahead. So right now the focus is very clear. We want to make a product that already right now today serves the passengers and serves the drivers. So we don't want to postpone those problems into the future, but really solve them right now.
And where are you finding it's being solved the most efficiently? Because it's fascinating that you're in Africa and you're quite often the main player in those countries.
Yeah, so Africa is a fascinating example because while in Europe private car ownership is fairly high and public transport is in most cities in a good condition, then the need for ride sharing is actually significantly smaller than in these developing markets. So that's why we're actually seeing the fastest growth there.
And how did you build this company from your bedroom to become the scale that it is, to lure in the likes of Didi? Where did you fund yourself first from? What are the lessons that you've learned?
So we started in Estonia 4 years ago, and initially it was really self-funded. So we saw that if you make a really, really good product, you don't really need to raise that much outside money if you're smart about which cities you get into. And that's the logic we followed for the first 4 years. Eventually we realized that this market opportunity is so big that we need extra money and outside money to actually fulfill it before anybody else does. So that's why we started looking for future new investors, and then we got matched up with Didi.
That was Taxify CEO Marcus Villig with our very own Caroline Hyde. And you will have to keep that image of Caroline fresh in your mind, because just after that interview, Caroline gave birth to a beautiful baby boy named Leo, which means, yes, she got to celebrate Labor Day across the pond. Baby, mom, and dad are doing wonderfully. As you can see there, he is so beautiful. And we want to welcome young Leo to the Bloomberg Tech family. Congratulations. Coming up, Angry Birds maker Rovio is preparing to go public. Can it buck the trend of app makers fizzling out once they hit the public markets? We'll discuss. This is Bloomberg. Flying jet taxi designer Lilium promises to haul passengers from downtown Manhattan to JFK Airport in just 5 minutes. The Munich-based startup just raised $90 million from investors, including Tencent, to build a prototype that can seat 5 people and fly as fast as 180 miles an hour. This comes after its existing 2-seater test model had a successful first flight in April. Well, Angry Birds is looking to go public. Finland's Rovio Entertainment is planning an initial public offering that could value the company at as much as $2 billion. Rovio is just the latest game maker to opt for an IPO, following the likes of online gaming company Zynga, which of course stumbled in its road to the public markets, despite having produced a game that became a cultural phenomenon. So, does the same fate await Rovio? Joining us now to discuss, our Bloomberg IPO reporter Alex Barinka out of New York. And Alex, having covered the Zynga IPO, we know that it wasn't smooth sailing. Is Rovio going to have any better luck?
The fear is that Rovio repeats what Zynga did and not really have a next thing. So Rovio might as well just be called Angry Birds, because that's what it's betting all of its revenue on. And you have to remember, Angry Birds came out, 7 years ago? So Rovio needs to kind of show that it can find some growth after this new strategy that it's implemented in the past couple of years of massive cost cuts kind of comes to fruition. You've seen the financials start to improve. You can see in the documents in the last quarter, they reported 94% revenue growth to 86 million euros. That's following another quarter of growth. So revenue is growing. It seems like things are working. And frankly, a lot of that has to do with their selling strategy, that they've shifted into more getting users to pay in-app instead of getting them to pay when they download these games.
So talk to us about what we know about the financials. How is the company itself doing?
So they are improving. Like I said, 86 million euros in revenue in the last quarter. That's about 101 million US dollars. So they are improving. When they came out the gate with Angry Birds, they followed it up with Angry Birds 2 back in 2010. So it's been a while since we've seen new things from them. You did see the Angry Birds movie come out that banked about $350 million in box offices. They have Angry Birds 2 coming out in 2019. But if you think about it, there's a bit of a gap there for hits. They have their old legacy games. They have kind of some of their recent introductory games that they have put out in mobile apps that aren't necessarily doing as well. And then they have this movie in 2019. So for the next couple of years here, you need to see them pushing the strategy of getting users to pay up in-app. Bloomberg talked to some of their executives earlier this month who said, look, this has been working for us. And they reminded the public that sometimes these games take a few years to catch on. Their exec said 3 years is the typical kind of high point of success for some of these games. So it's going to be whether or not this Angry Birds franchise can continue to find growth either in the mobile gaming world or some of these ancillary products like their movies.
And what about investor appetite in general for a company like this, Software Entertainment?
So they are listing in Helsinki, and there's actually their competition, Supercell, is in that market too. So the investor appetite seems to be there to a certain extent. It's all going to be about valuation. If you look back, the average value for some of these gaming companies is about 5 times revenue. At the reported valuation that we have of about $2 billion market value, this is almost double that. So there is a bit of a disconnect here when it comes to the comps that are currently trading and what Angry Birds is shilling with this share sale. So you're going to have to convince investors that they've cut all the costs they needed to, they're running a much more efficient ship here, and that they figured out the in-app purchasing strategy that will be successful for them going forward. And frankly, if it's me, I need to know what the next Angry Birds game is going to be. What are they going to do in this gap of 2017 and 2018? Where frankly they haven't told us about anything kind of new, buzzy, and exciting that's coming.
Right. Maybe it'll be a new movie. Our Bloomberg News IPO reporter Alex Barinka, thank you so much for joining us. I know you'll keep us posted. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. A reminder, we are live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. That is all for now. This is Bloomberg.